Today we have a disembodied handful of ghostly tales which we have plucked from the crypts over at Reddit. We'll be reading you 4 today, starting with this one. I worked in a nursing home for about 5 or so years. I heard, saw, and experienced things I could never explain. We had different levels of care at this place, from critical care, dementia care, and assisted living. This resident lived in the assisted living part of the building, which was rather new and had been built over an old convent they knocked down. The woman kept complaining about people in her room, constantly hitting the call light. She would say there was a man in her bed and she couldn't move, or he would get angry. There were several times I would yell at said man to leave. Then she would say other people started showing up, and she would describe their clothing. She kept saying she knew she sounded crazy. I would calm and assure her I understood. It got to the point where we were actually concerned about other people getting into her room. Maybe staff or something messing with her. Although, why only her? Furniture started moving around her room, too heavy for her to even attempt. Lamps upside down, end tables stacked on counters. Anytime I went into her room, I felt uneasy. The hairs on my neck would literally stand up, and paranormal stuff has never really bothered me. This was different. It felt menacing. One day, it was almost the end of my shift. I had yelled at all the shadow people that day and escorted them out of her room several times. She seemed to think this helped, so I did it. Except this time she called in a panic. She was mumbling very low, and I could hear panic in her voice. I had just left her room less than 10 minutes prior. I opened the door and all of her chairs are lined up in the middle of the room. I walk around confused, just speechless. I ask if she did this or how it happened. She stood there white. She just froze and kept staring. Through me though, not directly at me. She mumbled, "They did." I ask her to repeat herself, and she points behind me and says, "They did." I felt like my skeleton was about to jump out of my skin, and just this sudden wave of, I've got to get out of here now. I told her to come with me, to take a detailed complaint. I called another aide up to my area. This was a male co-worker. We walked down the hallway to her room, asked her to stay in the lobby for the time being. As my co-worker and I walked into her room, all of her furniture was now stacked in the middle of the room. I opened the door and screamed. The guy with me took off running down the hallway. He quit about a week later. I quit 8 months later. She was moved to a different room shortly after, and eventually she went into dementia care. But still to this day, this experience stays with me. I literally don't talk to my grandmother anymore because she doesn't believe me and thinks I'm insane. The rest of my family do believe me, but this is my story. My first experience with him was when I was a kid. I would have been very young, probably about 3 years old, but I remember it so vividly because it was one of my core memories as a younger child. I got out of bed to go get a drink, and my bedroom was at the end of the hallway with my parents' room next to me. As I walk past my parents' room, I can see them asleep in their bed, and my younger brother, who was a baby at the time, in his cot, and standing over my parents' bed was a large shadow figure with horns. He was staring right at me and smiling. After that, I got a drink and I went back to bed. It terrified me, but I was a kid, so I probably didn't understand what I was looking at. The second experience came when I was about 12. I was sharing a room with my younger brother, and it was a small room. Our beds were parallel with each other and pushed into the corners of the room, with about 1.5 meters in between, and at the foot of my bed was the door. At the foot of my brother's bed was the cupboard. I was woken up in the middle of the night to see, standing at the foot of my brother's bed, a very tall shadow man who would stare at me and slowly move close to me, and then dart back into the corner. I couldn't see his eyes, but I could feel them staring. Now this happened for months, usually like this, but sometimes he would shake it up a bit. I vividly remember one night where he took shoes out of our shoe basket and made them float around the room, and then just left them on the floor, so I picked them all up the next day. It didn't stop until I changed rooms. I know it wasn't sleep paralysis because I had to get up multiple times and run past him to go to the bathroom. I would pretend I was still asleep, but he wasn't having any of it. It was pretty terrifying to roll over and see a massive black mass just standing over you, and then darting backwards into the corner. The last time I saw him wasn't in person, but it was the only vision I've ever had. It's like he got in my head. I was about 16 and I was sitting on my bed, and all of a sudden my vision went and all I saw was him standing outside while I was standing inside. The sky was blood red and there was grass, but nothing else. The only thing separating us was a glass sliding door, which slowly started sliding open, and I snapped back to reality. I was definitely shook, but that was the last time I saw him. So, obviously I have a lot of questions, but I honestly don't know if I expect a solid answer. What is he? A demon? What is his intent? Why didn't he have horns on those latter occasions? Why does he appear at those times? Why have only I seen him? So again, I don't know what he is. I also am super skeptical, but I know this thing actually exists. I will tell you what happened to me working as a security guard in a morgue. My shift is night, from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., and each shift is covered by a single security guard. I am in charge of controlling the entry of corpses, receiving family members to enter and identify them, recording their data, and, of course, maintaining the security of the facility. The entrance to the building is about 20 meters from the security booth, and for some time now the door has been closed at 11 p.m. once all the doctors leave. One afternoon, an ambulance brought a death. The boys who gave the details of the deceased were very faint, sweaty and dizzy. The driver couldn't stop sobbing, and he felt very tired, something that almost never happens to these people. I asked him if they were okay and if they needed anything, and they answered no. They just wanted to deliver the body and go home. So we continued with the protocol without giving it any importance, and continued with our work. I wrote down the victim's information. The diagnosis was brutal: strangulation followed by impalement, found in a nearby lagoon. When I checked the cameras, I saw what they were carrying: a corpse in an advanced state of decomposition, with parts of the skull exposed, skin loose, maggots everywhere, and the stick had gone through it horribly, from the bottom up through the shoulder, and it was still there. I tried to contain my disgust as best I could and continued with my protocol. Around 10 p.m. I began to notice a foul smell coming from the grate outside the guard room. The smell usually comes out on summer days because the water passes through there when they wash the body for the autopsy. I tried spraying air freshener and closed the windows, but the stench persisted. Through the cameras I saw white smoke coming out of that grate for about 10 seconds. I was confused, but I didn't think anything more about it. I didn't want to. But as soon as I closed the front door, the door to my on-call room slammed violently behind me. I froze. I tried to convince myself it was the wind, but something told me it wasn't. When I got back, my phone died so quickly it seemed quite strange. So I decided to boot up my laptop. It took 20 minutes, a lot longer than normal, which I also found strange. So I just stared at the cameras out of boredom. I instantly regretted it. I saw one of the trays inside the burial chamber move on its own, sliding deeper into the chamber, where there was no longer access for security cameras or outsiders. I was stunned. Minutes later, the banging on the door began. Big, insistent blows. My heart was beating wildly. I turned off the cameras, turned up my music, and forced myself to ignore it all, until someone tapped on the window. I didn't know whether to pray or scream. At 4:15 a.m, the door to the guardhouse opened by itself. I went out, trembling, to close it, but my movements were clumsy, slow, as if something invisible was holding me back. The smell of rotting meat was unbearable, and I felt watched. In the guardroom we have a rosary and a cross with the Virgin Mary, so my only thought was to close my eyes, cross myself, and pray. Then I remembered that prayer to the Virgin Mary is often used in exorcisms. So I began to ask to stop everything that was happening. My body shaking from the cold, the window slammed shut again, and the smell started to fade. Finally, until I looked at the time, and it was 5 a.m. I had to open the door to let the workers in. From that night on, every time I enter that place, I pray. I had never felt a presence so dense and so dark. That shift was the only time I truly believed that something other than a human was watching me. I moved around a lot as a kid. We were the kind of family that would have boxes that would always go unopened and undisturbed between every move. My dad was a good guy, but he had issues with authority, so he usually had issues keeping a stable job for more than a year or so. When the lease was up, we'd move closer to his new job. Anyway, during one of these moves, my dad found a steal next to his job. It was an old 2-bed, 1-bath house with a detached garage. I want to say it was around $300 a month for rent. This was in 2003. But apparently it was a rough part of town. The landlord told us I won't go into specifics, but I am required to tell you that someone passed away in the house within the last 5 years. My dad didn't care. He saw a great deal and he just shrugged it off. We moved in soon after and things started escalating very quickly. There were noises in the house all the time. It was like we had other people living there. It would generally be noises that you'd expect when other people were around. Things like drawers opening and closing, doors swinging around on their own, water turning on in the bathroom and then turning back off again. Nothing malicious was happening, so we just lived with it. Another weird quirk about the house was that the front door had a keyhole on both sides, so you could not leave the locked house unless you had the keys. You can probably guess where this is going, but not a week or so after we moved in, we lost the keys. Boxes still littered the house and we were still in unpacking hell. So my dad, obviously stressed from the whole situation, started getting loud and angry about the keys. He accused me of stealing them. He was cursing and being a general pain. Then, out of nowhere, we hear the keys hit the floor in the living room, right in front of the couch. He picks them up, tries to rationalise what just happened, says, "F it," and leaves the house for work. Over the next few months, those stupid keys were the centre of the activity. My dad would put them in a glass bowl on top of our tube TV every day after work, and somehow, by the morning, they'd be gone. My favourite spot, by far, was when we found them in a sealed box of pots and pans that we still needed to unpack. It had those little handle holes on the side of the box for carrying, and it's like somebody just shoved them into the hole out of spite. We all got a good laugh out of that one. The worst thing that happened fairly frequently was the stomping. Most nights around 2 to 3 a.m, there would be very heavy footsteps pacing in the hallway outside our bedrooms. I confirmed with my dad when I was older that yes, it kind of freaked him out too. We had been living in this place for about 8 months at this point, and I was probably 8 years old. I heard the stomping one night and I just couldn't take it. I screamed out into the hallway, "Stop stomping around! I need sleep, goddammit!" 15 seconds of silence was abruptly interrupted by what sounded like a bull running full speed into my room. Then my door received 3 very aggressive slams, one after the other. It was so loud my dad woke up and came to check on me. My stomach started to turn and I suddenly felt like I had to use the toilet. I was frozen in bed when I heard my dad call out to me, "You okay, buddy?" from his bedroom. I mustered up the courage to head out to the hallway. As I got up, I could tell something wasn't right. I was shaking like a leaf, and my bowels were trying to evacuate while I was walking. I ran as fast as I could to the toilet, but it didn't help. There was a trail from about halfway between my bedroom and the toilet, and my poor dad, worried about my safety, followed me into the bathroom to figure out what the hell just happened. I explained everything, crying on the toilet, making a mess of myself and the house. I was embarrassed and terrified. After this, my dad told me, if you ever feel uncomfortable, you can come sleep in my room. Nothing can bug you when I'm around. But the final straw came a week later. My dad had been dating a girl for over a year, and she had been staying with us more and more. One of the nights she stayed over, they had a really minor fight right before bed. I think it was about cleaning. They both went to bed grumpy about it. Right around that 2 to 3 a.m. mark, his girlfriend got yanked out of bed by one of her ankles and dragged out of the bedroom and down the hallway. By her account, she woke up after she was on the floor and felt someone pulling on her leg, and it took her a while to realize exactly what was happening. She shrieked, and whatever it was let go. She ran back into the bedroom and turned the lights on and explained the whole thing to my dad. He sent me off to an aunt's house and stayed in the house alone for a few months, looking for another place to go. He figured it would be safer without me there. During the packing and moving out of that house, my dad had some friends swing by to keep him company while he packed. Almost everyone who came by to help mentioned that they saw a small white dog walking around right when they entered the house. Yeah, that place was haunted AF. I still think about it from time to time. I wonder if the people who live there now deal with the same stuff, or if it's all calmed down. If you like this video, then please consider subscribing, liking, and leaving a comment, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.